The Wes Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. Part 3, Interdimensional Manipulation in Present Time. Present Time Paper Number 1, the year 2012. Looking Forward, a deep dive into current ET situation, Part I, by Wes Penre, Monday, September 24, 2012, http://wespenre.com, Part 2. 4. Latest news, Nibiru coming in early. LPGC wants us to prepare now. We are told that the majority of Sirians left our planet sometime shortly after EA's appearance as Jesus Christ. There was supposedly an election on A.am.e, and all Sirians wanted to participate, because this was allegedly the first democratic election on their planet. Well, I use the words supposedly and allegedly, because I must say I don't always believe what the Sirians are telling LPGC. There are many options as of what A.am.e can be, and we can only do our best to put the pieces together. Soon we can start speculating about, with some evidence, what A.am.e is all about, but I want to wait a couple of papers until I release that information, because new evidence actually seems to be revealed as we speak. Still, I want to say already now what I think it is not and a few tidbits of what it may be, subject to change. Number. I do not think A.am.e is the home planet of the Sirians, something both Sitchin, LPGC and U2 states it is. According to them, there is no home planet in the star system of Sirius anymore, and A.am.e is it, that's their world. I would say with quite some confidence that this is not the case. We know that the Sirian kings, with the being Sitchin calls Anu as the Canis Kanim, the King of Kings, are residing on their home planet, orbiting either Sirius A or B. That's the headquarters of the Sirian Empire. What it looks to me is that A.am.e may be the name the Sirians use as the name of their home planet in Sirius, where the Sirian Canis Kanim has his residence, but when dealing with humans, they use the same name for one of their mobile hollowed-out craft, Sitchin's Nibiru. They may simply be bluffing us. They want the human soul group to believe that they don't reside in Sirius anymore. They want us to think they are space nomads, that Sirius is uninhabited, and that A.am.e, their old home world, is now moving through deep space, and is part of our solar system. Other scholars, apart from Sitchin, is telling us that Sitchin is wrong, and that Nibiru, in the sense of being the home planet of the Sirians, Anunnaki, is nowhere to be found in the Sumerian scriptures, not even on reference. Instead, the word Nibiru in terms of the same scriptures seems to be the name for the planet Venus. So, it would be interesting to know if the words A.am.e and A.am.i are actually mentioned in the scriptures or not, and if they are, what are they symbolizing? But why would they want us to believe that? Perhaps because it would make them seem less like intruders and more like parents. They present themselves as a much older race with more intelligence, multidimensional and interdimensional abilities, and a superior technology. Therefore, it seems logical that they, as part of our solar system, create life on their neighbor planet, which is Earth. So eventually they create us from a much less intelligent species, and thanks to the A.am.i, our evolution has been sped up a millionfold. It's a fact that this is what they want us to know, because this is what they have told LPGC, and that's what U2 Shamash told me. And now, our parents are coming back to help us through our adolescence as a species and take the leap into the adult world. In other words, they want us to believe that we owe our existence and our intelligence to them, because they gave us their superior DNA. If they can make us believe all this, they can take us anywhere from there on. But if it is correct that A.am.e actually is their Sirian home planet and headquarters, isn't there a Nibiru on the incoming, then? Well, in the Sirian Empire they use hollowed-out planets to move around in space. The so-called Nibiru could very well be one of them. The thing is that nonetheless, a planet with 9 moons has been spotted on its way towards the solar system since the beginning of the 1980s, at least. There is no doubt about it. But it's not reasonable to believe that this highly technological star race, who has a whole empire under their belt and can travel through the KHAA, would take 3,600 years between visits to Earth. In other words, every 3,600 years this incoming planet, filled with Sirians, including King Anu and the whole Parthenon, is reaching our solar system, and the inhabitants rush like crazy to get everything done here before their planet takes off into deep space again and will be gone for another almost 4 millennia. If the citizens of Nibiru have larger tasks at hand, they need to stay on Earth for another cycle, because they missed the ship. Not plausible. They have way better technologies than that. There is no doubt that these beings are interdimensional and travel in the nano-world like all other evolved aliens. They have learned to shrink their hollowed-out craft, travel through star lanes, and appear at their destination in next to no time. Not a big deal, unless you are a human on planet Earth. So what I'm saying is that there is no A.M.E, and there is no Nibiru in the sense we have been taught. It is quite obvious that the Sirians travel everywhere in space within this sector of the universe, Sector 9, other sectors, and even to other galaxies, and they do so in thousands of hollowed-out asteroids, planetoids, and planets. How do I know? Well, there are sources upon sources telling us that they signed an agreement with the Queen of the Stars, who is the Queen of the Orion Empire. The Orion Empire extends to other sectors of the Milky Way, besides Sector 9, and also to other galaxies, near and far. Once the Sirians signed the contract, they were free to use Orion star lanes, except for Peshmetan. They wanted the Sirians to stay away from Peshmetan, which leads right through the belt of Orion. The Queen wanted to make sure these warlords didn't take over this particular star lane, which starts at the galactic center and expands out to the edge of the Milky Way and further to the Andromeda Galaxy via an enormous pipeline, as usually is the case between galaxies. Other than that, the Sirians were, and are, permitted to travel anywhere within the Orion Empire and beyond. And they are capable to, no doubt. The A.M.E/Nibiru we see on NASA's space pictures and space films could be any Sirian hollowed-out craft of planet size. They can use one of those every time they want to create a cataclysm in a solar system like our own, if they want to. And this time, Nibiru is here to fulfill Sirian prophecy. The 9 moons are most probably smaller planetoids they will use as space or battleships, because they have more flexibility than a large-sized planet, 5 to 6 times bigger than Earth. The latest I've heard is that Nibiru is going to hit our solar system 50 to 85 years earlier than anticipated. In other words, it's going to hit us in December of 2012. And where did I get this information? I got it from Dr. A.R. Borden of LPGC. He and his team, which includes U2 Shamash, who is King Nanner's son and Enlil's grandson, are right now in process of setting up 3 websites which will tell us exactly what is going on and what needs to be done. This also includes a superwave hitting us from the galactic center due to our alignment now in 2012. According to LPGC, we are overdue for that event. It should have happened earlier, and may happen any time from today and 500 years into the future. The websites LPGC, in conjunction with the Sirians, are setting up are the following, and they are only in the beginning stage yet and go up and down for a while for maintenance. Earth Hope Initiative, http://earthhopeinitiative.com. Humanity the time has come, http://www.humanitythetimayhascome.com. The incoming, http://www.theincoming.info. The Life Physics Group California, LPGC, website, http://lifephysicsgroup.org. I talked about the wave of the supernova in Level I already, having this from other sources as well. Besides LPGC, the Pleiadians have been saying a similar thing, but are not portraying it as a catastrophe, like LPGC does. The Pleiadians describes it as a wave of consciousness coming in from the galactic center in form of light, traveling on gamma rays. These gamma rays are upgrading the cells and DNA in our bodies, and for those who have done their homework, this wave of energy will boost our bio-mind def. However, for people who are not prepared, the hit may be more dramatic. It can be hard on people's nervous system, and the rate of insanity, suicide, physiological and psychological breakdowns may increase many-fold, something we can factually see today. Many people will die, but many will also have their DNA upgraded as our biokins will be able to decode the geometry of light. So yes, it's going to be a rough time while this superwave passes through our solar system, but according to the Pleiadians, it's not going to end with a total catastrophe. However, they are talking about a potential unifying event that may happen later this year. But let's put aside the superwave for now and go back and concentrate on Nibiru. First of all, if a hollow-out spaceship is used by the warlords as a potential resource when they want a cataclysm to happen or start their experiment all over again, why are these major events happening every 3,600 years? Is that how the Sirians have planned it? They give us 3,600 years of evolution under strict dictatorship, and then it's bang. You're dead, humans, or time for a major population reduction, humans? Well, that's not as far-fetched as it sounds, but I don't think that's the case. I am convinced the Great Deluge in the Bible was created by an incoming planet, and that Enlil played a major role for that to happen, but if we go back in time, 3,600 years from that, and then another 3,600 years, we can possibly find remnants of something that happened somewhere on our planet, but was it because of Nibiru? There is no evidence of that, while we do have evidence, from the Bible, the Sumerian texts, and more, that there was a big flood about 11,500 BC, and that it could have been caused by an incoming planetary body, and also by Enlil's involvement, the biblical Yahweh. The following is more for the prophecy paper, which is going to be released soon, but what we humans, trapped in 3D, have a hard time understanding is that interdimensional beings can peek into all dimension to see a possible outcome for a certain decision. And yes, that includes looking into the future. But not even that, they can travel into a probable future and start creating an outcome of earlier events from there, which will affect the past, seen from that probable future. That particular past could for example be our present. This way they can create a whole timeline, from let's say 2,000 years ago to 1,000 years into our future, from where let's say the whole timeline was created. This way, they can be 1,000 years ahead of us in matter of time. This is something similar to what James of the Wingmakers is talking about as well in his interview with Project Camelot, saying Anu can operate from the future, thus having an advantage over other star beings. I don't necessarily agree with that Anu would be unique in that respect, because any interdimensional being should be able to do something similar if they had those intentions, but that may be a discussion for another time. This is the way a prophecy can be created, it is simply an agenda, started from the future, played out in what is perceived by us as present time. So they ignite the prophecy by letting an unsuspecting human have an extraordinary experience. This unsuspecting human is minding his own business and all of a sudden he gets a vision, or perhaps a visitor from the angelic realms. This visitor tells the shocked human how the future will be, and when the divine visitor leaves, the stunned human rushes to somebody who can write it down. Then, let's say, it will be included in some holy scriptures, such as the Bible, and I am of course thinking about John the Divine in this case. What the extraterrestrials are doing is that they present the blueprint for a probable future to one or more humans they know will bring it further to a larger public. But why would they bother? Why not just let everything play out and not tell us humans? Well, they need to tell us, or the prophecy will potentially not play out. Humans are unpredictable, because we change our thoughts and directions every second of the day, and the more people we are, the more directions we are able to take, logically speaking. But if a belief system is created around a certain prophecy, there is a big chance people stay on, or close to, the course of the timeline the star race created from the future with vector intentions. So what do we have here? Well, we have the 3% rule in practice. I talked about this in Level I. If 3% or more of humanity is believing the same thing, the rest, or most of the rest, of the population can easily be persuaded into following. The 3% rule won't work just by itself, or the whole world would be Christian today, because the Christian world population is reaching 33%, with Islam as number 2 with 21%. 6. But with 33% of the population following the same, or similar belief, it's quite easy to manipulate event in your favor if you know how to do it. Fundamental Christians believe that everything in the Bible should be taken face value. There are no allegories, metaphors, and no symbolism in the Bible, just pure fact. Not all of the 33% believe that the Bible is literal, though, as we have casual Christians as well, who believe in what is in the Bible without actually have read it all, but would agree that not everything in the Bible is literal. This, however, is enough for the manipulative star race, read the Sirians, to start manipulating events in their favor. If they stage events so they fit in with the prophecy they themselves have created, e.g. the Book of Revelation and the Book of Daniel, it's a big chance that about 30% of the population would believe it quite instantly, and the majority of the rest would eventually follow, too, because they are at least vaguely aware of what is written in these books. Then we have those of other religions, or no religions at all, who would not follow such an outcome, and a certain percentage who would fight it. This scenario easily would trigger the Battle of Armageddon. The incoming planet, whether you want to call it A.M.E. Nibiru or perhaps just an ordinary Sirian hollowed-out planet, has a big role to play in the biblical prophecies, as it seems. I discussed this in much detail in the prophecy section of Level I, so I won't repeat it here, but A.M.E. has a big part in playing them out. In Level I wrote that the event of the incoming planet was still years ahead, perhaps 50 to 85 years in the future or some such, which probably made quite a few people relax, although it would affect our children and grandchildren, of course. The scenario has apparently changed, however. The latest news is that A.M.E. is already in the solar system and is approaching rapidly from the south. It will look like a glowing asteroid at first, followed by 9 satellites. Due to its properties, it can best be seen in the infrared spectrum. Pictures and films of such an object have already been released, and I have showed a few of them on my blog. Here below is but one video out there. This is supposedly a genuine one. I have had it confirmed, so be aware of there are, and will be, fake ones out there as well. In 2011, CNN reported on a massive, hidden object in space, in an article called, Scientists, Telescope Hunt Massive Hidden Object in Space. I posted it on my blog and included the following newspaper article from Washington Post, released in 1984, so they knew about the incoming planet already in 1984, and of course much further back than that, but this is when it started coming out in the media, just to be suppressed again for another 30 years. Now, some media, like CNN, ABC, and NBC are talking about the incoming on and off, to start implanting the scenario into people's subconscious minds for it to potentially being used in the near future. Now, LPGC, the retired quantum physicists in Southern California, are telling us that A.M.E. is coming in much sooner than expected, and December 2012 is when it's going to be closest to Earth. I will give details about this in the prophecy paper very soon, but AR sent out an email to all members in his closed email group, in which I'm included, saying that actions are being taken to try to steer the planet slightly off course to prevent a catastrophe on Earth. They say that without alien intervention and their willingness to assist, it would be as bad as the deluge, 13,500 years ago. They say it will still be bad, even in the best case scenario, unless we start doing something down here on Earth as well. We need to prove ourselves to those not from here, they say, showing we are capable of taking care of our own business. All this is a part of a bigger picture, where the Sirians, and other star races as well, supposedly are watching us to see if we are mature enough to go from adolescence to adulthood, or if we still need our parents, read the Sirians, to look after us. Therefore, LPGC, beginning on September 17, started a series of precise spiritual exercises, involving a few members of the email group. It's being supervised by Dr. A.R. Borden, chief scientist of LPGC, being in direct conversation with the involved persons. After a certain amount of time, these meditating people will be exchanged for a group of others in a rotational pattern. These exercises are supposedly helping in steering A.M.E off course and save Earth. Those people involved in these sessions apparently also get to see that the A.M.I are real, and not some made-up alien group. In the beginning stage of all this, the planet Venus was also in the scenario, and may still be, but I want to hold back on this for a while to see how things develop before I spill beans that may not even be accurate. Interesting, though, is that Venus has been mentioned as the equivalent to Nibiru, A.M.E, in the Sumerian scriptures. However, I want to see more proof that the things LPGC are putting out there are really correct before I put the information out. The superwave is very much still on the table, so to speak, but now, when A.M.E is coming in faster than anticipated, showing up in space/time from has been out of sight, traveling the KHAA, apparently, it's become an equally important issue. We will see how this pans out, but my point is that A.M.E/Nibiru has a lot to do with the end-time prophecies. If what LPGC is telling us is correct, we may experience some open alien confrontation soon. However, don't hold your breath yet. I want to check this out some more first. If there is something urgent I need to tell people, I will post it on my blog, http://battleoferth.wordpress.com. So, if you haven't already, subscribe to it so you can get updates in your email. 5. Humanity, a species with reptilian traits. Before we were tampered with by EA and the Sirians, we were a very peaceful species. The primordial human race did not know about war and killing, it was not in their personality. However, if the Sirians were to be able to not only control us as a slave race in the gold mines, or in today's society as a workforce for the super rich, but also as foot soldiers in their wars, big or small, they had to give us some of their basic traits. So they made sure they gave us, among a lot of other reptilian genes, the reptilian brain. After had created their own version of humans, with the reptilian brain included, it was easy to teach mankind about warfare. It was built into their nervous system, which is connected to the DNA. But the reptilian brain has more functions than just fight or flight, freezing with fear, and predisposition for warfare. It also helps locking us into their whole control system. In the world the Sirians have created for us, it may have its advantages to have a fight or flight mechanism built into us, as it may save our lives when necessary. If you stand face to face with roaring lions, it's probably a good thing to understand that it's time to do something. The reptilian brain tells us to flee in a situation like that. But this part of the brain is also the part which is receptive to emotions like fear, terror, and insecurity. Like David Icke so correctly mentions in his book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, the reptilian brain is tuning us into their radio station. Icke is stressing how important this is to understand if we are to break out of their control system. He emphasizes that we are infinite consciousness and much more powerful than the reptilian traits we've been given, which lock us into the Earth grid and empower it with our mass consciousness. We are able to decide whether our mass consciousness will transmit the wavelength of fear and insecurity, or causative thoughts with strong intentions. Good to remember here as well is that if we, with our relatively small reptilian brain, can experience all these negative emotions, we can only imagine how strong these emotions are in a reptilian star race such as the Sirians. No wonder they don't trust anybody, including each other. It's all based on their own fear, terror, and insecurity. Even if they come here from the nano world, they are still connected with their Sirian selves, many of them still inhabiting Sirian bodies with this type of reptilian DNA, and besides, it's embedded in their mass consciousness. Still, one day they have to conquer their own fear, or they will forever live in insecurity whether someone will come and kill them. This must be the reason why they want to conquer not only the 4% space/time, but also the KHAA. In their state of mind, they won't give up until they have it all. Why? Because they think that not until then can they relax and be free from their own fear. Their whole scheme may seem unbelievable to us, but to them it's everyday living. This is what makes this star race so dangerous. Also makes me wonder, those who created them once upon a time must have had all this in mind. Apparently, they wanted to create a star race who could conquer the universe and the Khaa and overthrow the mother goddess. Who were these creator gods? Are they still in existence? 6. From a patriarchal regime to a matriarchal regime, both sides covered. I want to make the reader aware of the fact that it's not only the males that have done a lot of harm in the past, here on Earth and elsewhere. The females are guilty, too. Due to that we live in a feminine universe, we tend to think that the males did it. We have had a patriarchal regime on this planet for as long as 500,000 years or more, so during this time period we've been run by males more or less. There have been many galactic wars since this universe was created, and like I've mentioned before, wars are started for different reasons, but the ultimate reason is always power. Then we can argue that the motives are different, like war over real estate, over who is going to be in charge of a region, country, planet, galactic sector, or an empire. The motives are as many as we can think of, and another is war between genders. This, we understand, has been an ongoing war and/or conflict since genders were created. Male star beings kidnapped female star beings, tortured, raped, and interrogated them in order to comprehend what their power was all about. As a revenge, female star beings started attacking all males, although not all males were bad. Sometimes the females took over and created their own matriarchal regime, where the males were no more than slaves and treated horribly, so it goes both ways so long as the beings, males or females, are not evolved enough to find both an interior and exterior balance between the sexes, if they are sexual beings, that is. In order to get there, humankind still has a long way to go, because the war of the sexes were brought down here to Earth as well, and we learned how to divide and conquer from the gods. What we need now is to heal our wounds along the lines of time, and to do so, we need to understand ourselves better. We all have feminine and masculine aspects to ourselves, and we need to acknowledge both and not suppress one or the other. The Sirians and their human hybrid bloodlines know that a lot of healing is taking place amongst humans today as a consequence of the cosmic changes going on, something they can't do too much about. Still, there is one thing they can do, something that normally seems to work pretty well on humans, giving us distractions. The PTB know that many are waking up to the fact that the feminine energies are the divine energies, and once that is recognized, people will take things even further. So the elite understand they can't ignore the fact that things are changing, so they have to change with the currents. So, I suggest the reader pays attention to a new movement that is starting to pop up, especially on the internet. It certainly appears that the Sirian overlords are going out of their way to cover their basics and are now releasing information on the divine feminine that is pretty accurate, and very much in line with what I have revealed here in my papers. However, what differs is again the motives. Beware of those who tell you that it's time for the females to take over from the males, that it's time for a shift in leadership. Such movements can be quite convincing sometimes. This is just Sirian wolves, pun intended, in sheep's clothing. All they want is to start a new war, a new conflict, so they can continue using their divide and conquer formula. If they own both the patriarchal and matriarchal movements, they can pull the strings on either. Still, it's inevitable that people will get caught up in both, and from what started out as a freedom movement with the purpose to break loose from the patriarchal regime will instead turn groups against each other. You see how important it is with balancing things out, or we'll get extremes on either ends. 7. The Earthbound against the home planet, more divide and conquer? And while we're on the subject of divide and conquer, why don't we talk a little more about the Earthbound Marduk group, a supposed rebel group, extracted from the Serpent clan, the latter run by EA, and the home planet, A.am.e, run by King Nanner of the Ram clan, which is in Lil's clan, allegedly at war with each other. In level I we heard AR and LPGC out, and I described their experiences with the A.am.I, mostly from their perspective. To a certain degree, I also did so in level 2, in the previous Genesis papers. Now it's time to take a critical look at their stories and see if we can figure out what is really going on, especially now, in present time. The story goes, told by Zechariah Sitchin, LPGC, and Prince U2 Shamash of A.am.E as well in his correspondence with me, that Marduk rebelled against both his father, Ea, and the home planet. This was supposedly due to that Marduk felt he was treated unfairly by being given too little power. He was the son of Prince Ea of Orion, and his mother was Sirian. He thought he was owed a higher rank than he had, and his father was unable to help him, he felt. So, therefore he rebelled a few times, was even locked into the Great Pyramid of Giza in the Pyramid Wars, and continued rebelling once he'd escaped from there. He decided that if he's going to be treated without respect, he would increase the number of own followers and create his own rank and his own epithets. So, he began his quest to become the Lord of Earth instead of A.am.E. The end of the story is that Marduk was expelled from the home planet, twice. He was allowed to come for the election, where King Anu stepped down and King Nannar was elected, supposedly being a king of reformation, leading to softer politics and a more evolved worldview. This is still the image they want us to keep. They need us to think they will be our saviors in one capacity or another. And things are already starting to take form in this direction as I am writing this, so I know I am correct in what I am saying. More will be revealed in another context in a couple or so papers ahead. What I believe is not correct, however, is that Marduk got expelled from the rest of the Sirian alliance. Most of the Sirians had to attend business elsewhere, and I am not sure where they went, perhaps just back to Sirius, so they simply put Marduk in charge here on Earth with a selected skeleton crew of Sirians, Alpha Draconians, Greys, and a few other star races. This skeleton crew has ruled mankind behind the scenes more or less since the beginning of the Common Era, most of them living under the surface, something that is not foreign or uncomfortable for them at all, but most of the time being here as non-physical, interdimensional beings, onto energetics, manipulating world events through the PTB. This elite of human hybrids are not only easy to control due to their being of Sirian or Sirian/Pleiadian bloodlines, having had their genetics kept relatively clean and therefore easy to maneuver by Sirians in the nano world, but these bloodlines are also very much convinced that they are the true royals, and therefore have the divine right to rule. Moreover, we are told by Sitchin and the same people who endorse his work, see above, that both King Anu and Prince Enlil had visions of this divine being, sent out from Source, God, to tell them that it's time for humanity to stand on their own legs and become sovereign in body, mind, and spirit. The name of this divine being was Galzu. Both Anu and his son, Enlil, supposedly took this advice to heart once they realized that Galzu was a direct messenger from Source. Although, around the same time, the Sirians had to leave Earth, they promising to come back one day and help humanity take the first steps of their own, without having the Sirians ruling them. So, they left, only to come back now, full force, supposedly in December 2012. Let's ponder this and pretend for a moment that what Sitchin wrote in The Wars of Gods and Men is correct. Yes, that's where the above story comes from, allegedly translated by Sitchin himself from the Sumerian cuneiform. Why would the Sirians, after humbly have acknowledged that Earth belongs to the humans, nuke Sodom and Gomorrah and Sinai spaceport in 2024 BC? A great deal of radioactivity can still be measured in that area, and animals and humans who live there today are still mutating. Not only does that sound like a horrible crime where lots of humans died, but what disrespect for the planet and the living library. How can we take them seriously when they continue acting like spoiled kids who are given too much power to do whatever they want? But there is more. If they were serious and wanted to repent and help mankind taking their first baby steps on their own, why did they leave Marduk and his allied star races to rule Earth with an iron fist for more than 2,000 years? If we look back on the last 2,000 years, we see a lot of darkness, misery, slavery, wars, conflicts, genocide, and the list goes on. Is this a sign of goodwill, an attempt to prepare mankind for their liberation? Today, the Sirians defend themselves, saying that they overestimated Marduk, thinking he could do the job. Oh yes, he could certainly do the job. He's ruled with violence to an even greater degree than the rest of the Sirians put together. And I am sure that's what they really wanted him to do in the first place. And there is even more. About a year ago, Prince U2 Shamash, son of King Nannar, and grandson of Prince Enlil, contacted me because of my connection with LPGC, and because of what I wrote in my papers, Level I, about them and the history of planet Earth in general. He apparently liked what I'd done, and chose me as his public relations person. I showed to be quite a difficult PR person, however, because I didn't agree with his message, and I told him so. I have already spoken on this earlier and don't want to repeat myself more than necessary, so to make a long story short, U2 wants humankind to start forgiving the Sirians for what they did in the past. He said that then was then and now is now, and we need to let the past be the past and unite as brothers and sisters in present time. He further said that the Sirians are our creators, which is incorrect, and ancestors, which is correct, but that we now outnumber them, being 7 billion people on the planet. His intention is to make peace with mankind so we can face a common future together. Again, it seems like the Sirians can't help but contradict themselves. Apparently, he and his people are going to come down to Earth, inevitably start the Battle of Armageddon and play out the rest of the Bible prophecies. Although I pointed all this out to him, he didn't respond. However, this old plan of theirs may have to wait on the back burner for some time, because it looks like the Sirians and their partners in crime are planning something else first, albeit it could all be connected. One thing is just a preparation for something else. More about other, more urgent plans, in the prophecy section. The reason I am bringing all this up here is to show the reader that these are the guys who are behind the divide and conquer technique so many researchers and people in general have noticed the global elite are experts in. Well, they have had good teachers. We live in strange times, indeed. There are so many agendas playing out right now that it's hard to keep track. We have reached a peak of 7 billion people on the planet, which could be a blessing and a curse for everybody involved in any agenda whatsoever. 7 billion souls is a lot of energy, especially when they are all energized, biologically and spiritually, by cosmic forces as well. The Pleiadians say in their lectures over and over that making room for 7 billion people on the planet is something that has been planned for a long time, both by the Sirians and the more benevolent forces. It was prepared through the Industrial Revolution. If that event wouldn't have happened, the planet could not have housed this many people as successfully as it has, of course to the cost of more underdeveloped countries, from where we get much of our resources. The Sirians wanted the numbers, to be able to draw from this incredible amount of energy for their own purposes of conquering this universe and the one belonging to the goddess. A final battle before the end of time as we know it would be a very intense moment from which the reptilian overlords could gain a lot of power in a short amount of time. With a little help from technology they could use weather and wind in their manipulation, and the war machine to create the fear and terror of enormous proportions that would catapult them right into the higher realms. They have had millennia to think this plan through, and they've planned it, not from the present, but from the future with vector intentions. Think of yourself standing in your backyard, drawing a long line across the yard from one side to the other. Then make some perpendicular, shorter lines along the main line, and this would be the timeline of planet Earth. Somewhere along that timeline, which you now could view from beginning to end, is the year 2012. To the left of that point you have all the events that have happened since the beginning of Earth. To the right you have the future until the day Earth is destroyed, i.e. you are able to see and control the whole timeline. So what you want to do as a Sirian is, after you've decided in which time certain prophecies are going to play out, look at the whole timeline and create an outcome in the future, seen from our perspective of linear time. Once a probable outcome is created, I will explain probable in a minute, you can start planning for specific events over the line of time. And it seems like 2012 is the year of choice as it coincides with the end of a larger cosmic cycle and other prophecies as well. Oh no, we may say, that means they have us in their grip and there is nothing we can do about it. They can change events as they go along. Well, it's not quite that easy. All they can do is to look at it from a rather one-dimensional perspective and try to manipulate things from there. However, they are fully aware of that we are talking about a lot of people here and each one of us has their own portion of free will, and each one of us creates our own reality. Therefore, we are quite unpredictable. Sometimes it may seem like we're a herd of sheep, willing to go to slaughter, not knowing better, but this is a heck of a large herd the Sirians have to manage. And we are changing our minds all the time, which makes it impossible to predict exactly what is going to happen. So fact remains that even the Sirians with their technology and interdimensional perspective can't control the multiverse, which is fluid and ever-changing. So, the closer it is to a certain planned event, the easier it is to predict the outcome, and the further in the future, the harder it is. But now, with so many people involved, even a few days ahead is challenging to predict and control. So, the Sirians are having problems with the fast energies and time speeding up during the nanosecond, and some steps in their plans seem to be in need of change. On the other hand, it has our own awakening of consciousness being a very beneficial factor in the Earth drama. As the Pleiadians say, without the numbers we can't wake up enough to break free from the bondage. This is the end of part 1 in this series of papers, discussing the current ET situation. I hope you have gotten at least a few tidbits of more information that you didn't have before. If so, I am very pleased. All this on which I'm writing, is extremely helpful for myself and my own well-being, mental stability, protection, and spiritual development. More to come, dear friends.